Hey, you guys. So I want to introduce you to Henry. He's part of our group, graduated cohort 1 of any ICF coaching I've done. He was in the first group, so that's super fun. And he is a master networker, probably the best networker that I personally know. And so I'm like, we need to get this guy in this group talking to you guys, because I know some of you have just said, in terms of building business, I want to, like, how do you get out there and meet people who could be potential clients or people who would refer you? And networking groups is a really fantastic way to do that. I have not joined a networking group personally, but I have friends who are in them, and when they are out of town, they would ask me to sub. So I've actually gone to, I don't know, probably a couple dozen times I've been at networking groups, sometimes the one that he's in, one of the ones he's in. And I've actually, I got a 12-month client just being there to sub one day. So it definitely works. Networking is fantastic. And I've met a lot of amazing people and gotten referrals. Anyway, networking is really awesome. And this guy is very, very, very involved and just an amazing networker. I think, yeah, I'll let you tell a little bit about it before I say more. But
Sure.
Henry, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience of networking and maybe how you define networking when we're talking about it.
Yeah, I would
What
love
do you
to.
mean?
I would love to. And thanks for setting the bar really high there. I hope
You
I
really
don't
are.
disappoint
You're
you guys.
such a connector. You're always, let me introduce you to so-and-so. And I gotta give your names. You're always connecting people. It's great.
And I'm glad you said that word, because that's actually what networking is.
To you.
Not to overcomplicate it, but it's connecting.
Yeah.
My journey started when I transitioned from the classroom. I was a classroom teacher for almost 15 years, and then went into entrepreneurship. A little overlap in there.
Mm-hmm.
But when I transitioned into that life, then prior to that, let's reverse, right? As a classroom teacher, you don't have to network.
Mm-hmm.
There's, in fact, the students are assigned to your classroom. They come to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first time, in terms of networking, I was introduced to, well, this is, the world is your playground, and networking is a vehicle to do so. How I define networking today is much different from what I understood it to be at the very beginning.
What did you think it was before?
Networking, I thought, was going out there and trying to sell a bunch of stuff, right? And I feel like that's the more common
Assumption or whatever. Yeah.
right definition that people assume, especially for people that aren't entrepreneurs, right? And unfortunately, that's one of the things that gives entrepreneurship a bad name, a bad rap, is because everyone thinks, not everyone, but a lot of people in the corporate America assume that if you're an entrepreneur, then you're a salesman, and you're out there pushing your product to people that don't actually need your product and trying
Or
to
want it,
convince them.
yeah.
And that's not what networking is. Networking is discovering resources, discovering needs, and marrying them together. Whether or not you benefit financially from it directly, it is building connections between people that have needs and people that have resources. And that's what I love.
And when we say networking, I know at least one of the associations for me is you can become a member in a networking group that, like the ones I know of, meet once a week at a certain time, certain place. There's a seat at the table for each different industry, and they don't have overlap. And then you come and you share about what you're up to or what you're needing, or you make referrals to different people in the group. Are there other things when we talk about networking? Is there anything you would add to that? And then is there anything else, kind of as we're just kind of painting the picture of what networking is?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm glad you brought up those referral groups, because that definitely is a piece of it. But in what I've learned from experience over the past, I've been networking for about 5 years, taking classes, read books, webinars, all that kind of stuff. That's actually a small piece of the pie.
Okay, so tell us more.
So I look at it in sort of like a spectrum. Okay, on one end of the spectrum, it's the exclusivity of you're meeting for a purpose. It's very pointed with a schedule, almost like
Yeah.
an agenda.
Yeah.
and everyone introduces. They have 60 seconds. There's actually a timer,
Yeah.
and you say the type of people that you help support, and what you're asking for that week, and then people like refer back and forth between each other. On the opposite end of there is like the organic conversations when you're like, I networked this morning playing pickleball,
Yeah.
right?
love
At a
it.
retirement village
That's
of all
amazing.
places. I think I was the only one under the age of 75.
That's amazing.
And that is, we're playing pickleball and we're just catching up and talking about our lives, our families, our
Building
fun,
relationship.
building relationships. And I find out that, I won't mention any names for confidentiality, right? But I find out that someone has recently had a hip replacement, or his girlfriend has recently had a hip replacement. Okay,
So Henry is a coach and also works inside of a health and wellness space as well. So that's why I'm talking about the hip.
So you asked me to introduce myself, and, and I actually went straight into networking because it's something that it excites
It
me.
applies over any industry. I mean,
Any.
human connection, building relationship, and so many of the competencies. I know we were talking about that too. Like networking is just using most of the competencies. Building trust and
Yes.
safety, being really present, active listening is one you were talking about.
Right. Using the different tools, like the mirroring and the sounds like what I hear you saying is repeating. I also have really noticed a difference prior to going through the ICF certification and present day. I find myself not only listening more intently, not making up the stories while I am receiving, not coming with an agenda, but simply listening and walking alongside the other person, letting them determine what direction we're heading.
That's so cool, man.
The empathy, I would say, is a huge difference. There's almost a time, every single conversation that I've had since ICF, where there's a moment that you can feel eye contact just locks. And it's not just right? We call it intimacy. And I think some of you might relate to this. Into me you see, intimacy. And it clicks. There's almost this moment that I see you and you see me. And you don't even need to say it. It just happens. That
And you both
rarely
feel it.
happened before. It happens every conversation
That's
now.
amazing. That's amazing. That is awesome. What are your favorite things about networking?
Oh, there's
Why
two-
do you spend like about how much time a week do you think you spend in networking?
Oh gosh.
It's like almost every day for you, right?
So if you take the definition of networking as building relationships and with the intent of finding resources and needs and marrying them together, it's all the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it's in casual conversation. Like, it's hard to quantify how many hours per week or day, because like I said, this morning, I'll reverse even further back. I took a couple people to the airport this morning, and that was networking. We were just simply talking about our lives. I went to the pickleball courts, and that's networking, because we're playing pickleball and we're making connection with one another and diving deeper at times between the games. And
Did you play volleyball today too?
I am
Or
planning on
pickleball?
it.
Oh, later.
Pickleball, volleyball are usually part of my daily regimen,
Uh-huh.
and that's networking too. But
Which is
then,
beautiful because it's something you genuinely love to do. So getting in those spaces, we've talked about that, like getting yourself into the spaces that you genuinely want to be in, that you enjoy, that fill you up, you're going to connect with, like-minded, like-hearted people. So often your best clients are people that have been where you have, you're a little bit ahead of them. Often. I mean, maybe not in the 75-year-old case for you this morning.
I mean,
but
in certain domains, right?
Yeah.
And if you haven't already taken Talie's life wheel assessment, right? It's something I highly encourage. I think I've done it 5 times with you over the past couple of years. And so while someone in their 70s might be, a 7 out of 10 in their finances,
Maybe their health, their
health and fitness, or in their career, or in their giving back. You know, it's and that shifts every single time you reevaluate yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily about it's not a cut and dry scale from, oh, you're at a B this year, you're going to be an A when you turn 70. It's really,
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe it. It's the best way to visualize it is using the life wheel.
Yeah, it's a great tool if you haven't used it. You do a vision board every year. Favorite things about networking for you? What do you love about it?
Oh, there's too many. So I think I was just talking to someone earlier today about this. In a typical 9-to-5 kind of job, right? We'll just take that because a lot of us are familiar. All of us are probably familiar with what that looks like. You might completely compartmentalize your career, and then you compartmentalize. Oftentimes, we compartmentalize our family. And it's either we're working on our career or we're working on our family, and we have no time for friends,
It's
or
that
we have
balance,
no time for
that place of balance. Is
yeah,
hard.
or fitness, right? Wait, I'm gaining weight because I'm working all the time, and the time that I'm not working, I'm spending with my kids. But there's a way to do both, and networking allows you to do all of it. You can have fun while you network with your friends and your family, and it's actually increasing your finances at the same time, building your relationships and
Health. For you,
your
you've
health
overlapped your
and-
health
yeah.
in that a lot. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, networking allows you to fully integrate all 8 of those domains.
All of who you are.
and all
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that.
That's
You
I think
started
that's what
to
I love
say
about it.
earlier, and I realized we got away from it, the triangle. You were like, that's not
Triangle.
like the networking groups or referral groups is just one of those. Say more about
Right.
the other aspects.
So on that spectrum, right? There's the hard referral groups. Let's get together with an agenda, with time restraints of this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm connecting you with, and let's record it and everything.
Yeah.
To the open, organic conversations, and then there's all these in between, like socials. So
Yeah.
I'm part of a network group called Connected. It was
Chris
started by
Borja,
Chris and
Thomas.
Belinda Borja. Great people. If you don't know them, they're located here in Columbus, Ohio, but they're global. They have an organization that's 8,000 plus people, growing constantly on a daily basis. And they are master networkers. They connect resources with needs. And they have different levels of events. Some of those events, in fact, I think there's one happening tomorrow night, where they get together in a certain location, and part of it is just free, no structure. You just come in
fun.
and you just
Walk around and
socialize.
Hang out with people.
Yeah, sometimes it's at, it could be at a bowling alley or a Top Golf golfing range. It could be, we've done events where Chris came up with this name called Righty Bikey. You get on your bikes
That's awesome.
and you bicycle
That's
and
great.
you get to know each other. You're networking,
That's
right?
fun.
We did another one called a walkie-talkie. So
he likes those or rhyming.
Right.
That's
We got
funny.
together at I think it was High Banks Park, and we have a certain number of checkpoints. You start out with, hey, grab someone that you don't know, and that's your buddy, that's your new best friend. You're going to introduce yourselves, you're going to talk about something personal and
great.
something professional.
That's great.
And at the checkpoint, you're going to introduce your new best friend. And then you switch buddies at the next
That's
checkpoint,
great.
and you go
That's
on.
great. I love
And so
it.
you're getting exercise, you're getting
That's
sunlight,
so
fresh
great.
air,
It's
you're
amazing.
working on your fitness
That's
and health.
so good, man.
And connections.
I know you've gotten things together where you're like, hey, everybody bring your dog. We're going to come hang out. And like, that's
Right.
networking. I came to that. I don't even have a dog. It was so fun. It
That was
great.
a BYOD. Bring your
BYOD.
own dog.
That was
Yeah, and I
fun.
know you came to that, and I
It was fun.
apologize that we didn't expect it to snow that day.
It was
but
beautiful.
It was so much
beautiful.
fun.
Anyway, just a way to connect. And Henry's like, let me introduce you. And like when you know things about certain people and you're introducing them to other people, you can kind of help make some of those things. Like, you guys have this in common, or like you should ask him about, whatever. It's great to just be a connector. And we all know whatever we give out comes back. So
Yeah. And I want to throw in here too, what I realized after recognizing the true definition and this the serving purpose of networking, because that's really what
Being
it
in
is. It's giver's
contribution.
gain. It's in being in contribution. It is
Yeah.
serving others.
Yeah.
I realized I actually have been networking all my life, and you might be making this epiphany right now too. Is prior to entrepreneurship, I also served in the church as an outreach director. Okay, and whether or not you hold a title or when you're at church, and I know there might be some people on here that are that's a foreign kind of concept or idea, but if you've ever been part of a religious affiliation or
Organization.
an organization, right? It is when people are new and they're coming in. Then what's one of the first questions you ask, right? It's like,
How do I get
hey,
connected?
yeah, like that's what you're seeking. You're
Yeah,
seeking
yeah.
belonging, and that's really something at a fundamental level that all humans are looking for. It's like, hey, so what do you do? Do you live close by? Like, how'd you hear about the church? And what I'm doing is I'm listening to their background, and automatically, oh my gosh, I need to connect you with Rich. Rich loves fishing too. He's got kids at the Hilliard Middle School just like you. And he loves collecting baseball cards. Like, you guys would totally get along. Let me introduce you to Rich. And so automatically, and I don't benefit financially from that at all, but I'm connecting them, giving them a belonging by relating them.
Yeah.
Or finding those relation
Yes,
touch points.
yes. And so how does networking grow a coaching business, for example? How does that work? How does that work out?
I'll give you a tangible example. With my global food company business, that's really what I represent, the health and wellness seat in a lot of these network groups. One in particular, I shared some of the things that I'm doing in my business by applying some of the ICF competencies, and I always introduce myself as one, a life coach, and two, an affiliate with a global food company. And in that came about one of our realtors in the group. She says, I have a son who could maybe use some of your services. Could we meet together? So we got together. That turned into talking to a neighbor that had another son, and then his sister, and then recently they've talked to another. So
It just spreads like that.
Right.
And I will say, I grew my entire coaching business just this way. Like, I never did any kind of marketing. It was all organic relationship, and then referrals from people that I worked with or people that knew me or knew what I did. So my entire business was built just on this, just on building relationship, finding ways to serve and give back. And I mean, obviously you have to fulfill, you have to coach well, but you guys have all been trained, so you are going to coach well. Yeah, so referrals and connections is really so much, I think, where it's at.
And I think that's a very important piece to, if we can just take a second to.
Yeah, and we'll let this be the last thing just so we don't get too long.
Yeah, sure. Because we've mentioned a couple networking organizations out there, but there's no one right way to find resources or to build your clientele. One of the keys is connection. It's relationship.
Yeah.
And that
our coaching, all the
lends itself
competencies,
so
it's
perfectly
just
to
that you guys have all been trained in that very thing. So if you just apply that to getting out there and meeting people that you don't know and being who you are and connecting, it is a tremendous gift. So happy networking. If any of this is resonating, you can reach out. How do you get connected with networking groups? If they're like, I think this is a great idea.
Yeah, so if you're here in Columbus, you can certainly reach out to either, regardless, reach out to us. If you're looking for something in person, then you can go to meetup.com and type in networking. Go to Facebook. There's all sorts of different groups on there. If you want something that is about a certain topic or a certain demographic, a lot of cities have, we're in Dublin, Ohio here, we have Dublin, Ohio in the know, Worthington in the know, Clintonville in the know, or Dublin moms in the know,
Is that
right?
in the KNOW?
Yes, KNOW as in know.
In the know.
In the know. And those are groups of like Dublin moms in the know, groups of moms that are just looking for resources.
The group we were in is an international group, right?
Yes. So, can I mention the name of it?
Yeah.
So there's some larger organizations, one in particularly called BNI, Business Networking International. It's the largest, sometimes in many senses, quantifiably the most successful of its kind. There's not just here in the US, it is truly global. There's Spirits, there's Synergies, there's Connected Network, there's H7s. I mean, and all of them, they're all labeled as networking groups, social groups. Some of them are
Which
free.
you pay to. Okay,
some of them are paid,
free, and some of them you pay.
Yep.
You know, like what's kind of the ballpark if you wanted to pay to go be part of that for a year? What's the ROI? Like, what's the investment and kind of ROI in that?
Sure. So some of them, again, are free. Some of them are as much as $1,000 a year. And I'd say most of them are somewhere in between in the 200, 300-ish a year for membership. Some of them allow you to come and go as you please. There are some that you have to be there every single Tuesday at this time.
Or you have to get a sub.
And if you don't show up, you got to get a sub. And there's definitely some value in that, right? Because if you have some skin in the game, the accountability, you're there every week, that means that you are
building your business,
growing, you're serious about it. You are referring others, and they are referring you. They get to know you better. And sometimes that's not. Yeah, sometimes that's not a good fit, right? If you're a junk removal person, then you might have calls during certain times, since you can't commit to a certain time on a certain day every single week of the year. And so find your niche by just checking them out. You can visit every single one of them for free. Sometimes up to 3 times, sometimes more, less. And before they start having a conversation with you and saying, okay, let's sit down. Are you in or are you out?
So name a couple of the free ones.
So free ones would be Connected.
Okay.
Connected with Chris Borja and they have, and Belinda, they have virtual events. You can literally jump on from London. I met a guy from London the other day.
That's awesome.
Or in-person events, and those happen all over the country, but mostly here in the Columbus vicinity.
Okay.
And if you want to go into certain tiers, then there are some ways that you can support and get some other things out of it. You also asked about ROI. That's a very important question, because you can pay $1,000 or $2,000 annual membership for a group, but if you are not having one-on-ones, if you're not doing the work outside of it, you are not making the connections at a deeper level than the hour that you meet every week, your ROI is not going to be worth it. It's not going to be high at all. You could also,
because that's one of the things in those networking groups, is they encourage you to get together and do coffee or one-on-ones somehow.
Every single one of them. Yeah, and that's really
where the
connection happens.
Which is where so many of my clients have come from. Where you get together and like, tell me about what you do and how can I serve your business, that kind of thing. So, and doing that with each other. You guys coach in specific niches, so really great to learn what those are from each other and refer.
And you asked about some other free ones too. That you can, if you contact if you're part of a church, ask your pastors. For instance, I'm part of a men's group that meets once a month, and most of us are probably not even entrepreneurs. We just gather in the same place, about 150 of us. It was this past Thursday. And there's a little time of worship, but there's the connection piece and the time, the structure that's built into that, and then the non-structured pieces of it as well. That's totally networking, and made just tons of great, deep relationships from those kind of things.
Amazing. That's awesome.
So they're all out there. You just need to just go out and start asking.
That's awesome. And you said that goes up to 1,000, and when I think about that, and I think about the one client, that 12-month client that I got just from subbing the 1 week, I think at that time my prices might have been, I think it was a $12,000 package. So if I was paying for that group, like that would have been very worth it to pay $1,000 to get a $12,000 client, you know, and then the referrals and things like that from him as well. So
Right.
yeah, the ROI is there, especially in our, I feel like in our industry, you know, because of what we can charge for what we do. It's very worth it, and especially like $200 or $300, really good ROI. David's in this group, and I actually met David. So sweet. I met David at
BNI.
BNI. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I was there to sub for somebody else, and he was the coach in there. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're a coach too. Let's have coffee." So we had coffee, and now he's like one of my dearest friends and an amazing resource in this group. So yeah, what you get out of networking on top of the actual dollars, just the relationships that you build, the support, the connections, and all of that. So yeah, that's a little bit about networking and a little bit about Henry. So now you know him a little bit more, and certainly he said reach out if you have any questions about it. But hopefully this has been supportive for you. Lots of love.